Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to today's video. My name is Jess, and I specialize in inner alchemy and energy mastery. Today, I would like to go a little deeper into sharing myself, being more vulnerable with you guys, because right now we are undergoing a powerful planetary awakening. In the past 3 years, we have seen so many things unravel, so many things that have been kept hidden away from our consciousness have come to the surface. We hear a lot about spiritual awakening, 5D, New Earth, ascension. We hear about spiritual wars, revelation, right? The time where prophecies are becoming real, when we are beginning to see that there is so much more that lies beneath our physical eyes and what we have been told in mainstream media, mainstream information, and altogether society. This is the time when we are reawakening our ancient memory that has been coiled deeply, going so deep into the illusion in order to awaken. And I'm going to share with you my initiation into the dark night of the soul, because in the past 3 years, we hear so much talk about the dark night of the soul, initiation, inner child healing, subconscious healing. But what does that really mean, and how does that look like? And this is what I want to share with you through my story. My initiation was triggered on Halloween 2004 when I was 15 years old. This day, I ended up getting really, really high. I was going through a lot at this time. I was really inward. I was a very quiet person, really living in my own mind, in my own world, and it was very hard for me to express myself. I grew up in a lot of trauma. I grew up in violence, my father being an alcoholic and addict and a violent man. My mother, she always did her best to protect her children, to get us out of poverty, to give us a better life. And although she did everything that she could, it wasn't enough to help me. It wasn't enough because I needed to experience the darkness. So no matter how much my mother tried to not have me go down a dark path, I needed to go through that. And on Halloween of 2004, this is when my nightmare became a reality. My mother, she found me extremely high. I had smoked so much this day. I was going through a lot. And at the same time, I was trying to play the role of a good child, obedient, getting good grades at school, trying to focus. Meanwhile, within myself, I was in chaos. I didn't know who I was. I felt like there was something that I was forgetting. And I didn't feel like my true self. I felt so out of alignment. I felt unhappy. I just wanted to run away. I wanted to be free, but I didn't know how. And I was still young, and there was no one around me that can guide me. And I didn't know how to express myself because I didn't feel safe. I was living in an unsafe environment at home because of the family violence. So on November 1st, which is Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, the day after Halloween, this is the day that I felt like I could no longer live, and I wanted to take my life. I was done. I felt weak. I felt tired. I felt like my 15-year-old self could no longer live in the body that I was living in because it was so heavy. To be me, it was so heavy and hard. So this day, when I woke up, the day after Halloween, My mother, she was really angry and she was disappointed with me, and she went to my high school to go tell the principal what had happened, that I was getting high at school. And I took that opportunity when she left for me to run away. I took whatever change I had left, and I had visions months before this that I needed to go to Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, which is Hippie Hill. I needed to go there. There was something there calling me. So this is what I did. I took myself, got on the BART station, took the bus, and I made it to Haight-Ashbury. And this is when I met some hippies who were traveling, and I told them what I was going through. I told them I was looking for heroin. I was done with life, and I just wanted to end it. I wanted to leave this body. I had two options. One, I can either take off with them to Oregon and go pick some mushrooms, go do some trades, do drug trading and all this, or I can go find some heroin and end my life. So I ended up taking the first choice, and I took off with them. In that moment, I completely went through a death. I went through a complete ego death where I killed the old Jess, the old me. And I was ready to just immerse myself in darkness. I ended up smoking a high dose of DMT this night. And I ended up taking a heroic dose of mushrooms while I was smoking a lot of weed, and I was going through a major mental shatter. That combination led me to die this night, and my consciousness left my body. I had a seizure, I was told, and all I remember was that as soon as I left my body, my consciousness shot out, and I was spinning in the universe. I was spinning as a solar system. And from there, I went into different dimensions, different memories. And I'm sharing this with you because it's important for you guys to understand how this can manifest. And it may seem crazy. It may seem in the physical like something chaotic, like what is going on? And many times people don't know how to respond to someone who is going through a huge spiritual crisis, because it can look as if this person has completely lost their mind. Because when you go through a spiritual initiation, this is what is happening. You need to lose your mind, because our mind has been infiltrated with so many programs, and death needs to take place, a psychological death. So this is what I experienced. It was a psychological death that ripped me away from everything that I knew. And it led me to the point of taking my own life, leaving my body, and shooting out into my own inner dimensions. So the following day I woke up, and this is when I was no longer the Jess from the day before. I was gone for 16 days, and those 16 days were the 16 days of darkness, where I literally traveled into the underworld. And in the physical world, I was literally living a hell. I was homeless on the streets of Oregon, eating drugs, asking for money. I hated my life. I was hoping that someone would kill me. So as within myself, I was traveling into these dark spaces, ancient memories coming into the forefront of my consciousness. I was also physically going through a deterioration of my body, of my everything. And that was something that was not easy to overcome, because after those 16 days of darkness, the cops found me in Oregon, and I was registered as a runaway. And my mother was able to come to Oregon and pick me up from juvenile hall. Once I returned back home to California, I was never the same. Everything that I once thought was real, I knew now that it wasn't real. So I no longer was able to come back into high school and be a normal student. What happened after this is that I ended up going even more insane in the eyes of society. I was that crazy kid who was talking about time traveling and other dimensions. So after coming back home, when my mom found me, my life was never the same. I ended up having another psychotic breakdown after this, and my mother ended up taking me to the emergency to hospitalize me. And this is when I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is manic depression, which means that not only are you battling with intense mood swings, but you also have periods of psychosis where you can obsess and you can hit really high points, where you can feel like you're God Almighty or you're on top of the world. You have such enormous fuel going through you. And at the same time, at the blink of an eye, you can drop down and you can feel like you are sinking into the bottomless pit of hell. So this is what I was going through. And I didn't have anyone to guide me, to help me understand that what I was experiencing was a spiritual initiation and reawakening of my soul. Because on the outside, I looked like I was crazy, that I was suffering from psychosis, delusions. I was literally crumbling. My life was falling apart. I was living on the streets. I was speaking gibberish. I was seeing signs. I was lost in other timelines. So of course it was going to look like I had lost my mind. But inside of myself, it made sense. I just couldn't ground it in my reality. And I lived like this for years. And then I went through another phase where I then felt like I needed to get sober. And then I felt this urge when I turned 18 to start working out. And then at this time is when I said, you know what? I want to let go of that old image of the crazy Jess. I want to feel like I fit in more. I want to be more material. So then I started to focus on building my physical body, and I shut down everything that was spiritual. Everything that once labeled me as crazy Jess, I completely cut it off. I burnt everything, all my notes, all my codes. I burnt everything and I completely created a brand new identity. And this is when I became obsessed with working out. Now I was focusing on building my body. I wanted to be tough, you know? I wanted no one to mess with me. I didn't want people to see me as crazy. I just wanted to fit in. Even if I never fit in, I just wanted to fit in. So I put everything aside and I focused on the material. I became a gym rat. I also became then addicted to sex, and I became addicted to a lot of material pleasure. And that lasted for 10 years. Up until 2017, when I had another major initiation. And this initiation was the piece that was missing from my evolution. Because before my awakening in 2017, I was now really building myself in the material, because those 10 years that I had ran from my spiritual truth, I built myself in the material, right? I was building my ego, my false ego, my pride. When I got to a point where it was no longer going to serve me, I had this inner awakening on a cellular level where I knew that I needed to change. Something was happening inside of me, and I could no longer continue to go in that way. Around this time, I had gotten off my medications that I was on for 12 years, and I began to have again these moments where I felt like I was having higher energies coming down, and I was seeing codes and I was receiving messages. But something inside me said, Jess, just know that you are not going crazy. You need to trust. But at that time, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to trust my intuition. And this is where everything changed for me. Because in 2017, when I reawakened, I realized that in 2004, I had been initiated and I needed to go through all of those phases in my life of going so deep into darkness, deep into my shadow, deep into the ego, only to come out of it and realize that that was all part of the divine plan, and that I was right. The doctors didn't understand what I was going through. What they were calling psychotic, what they were calling crazy, I knew always within myself that it would make sense one day because it was something larger than me. And finally, in 2017, I had the wake-up call where I knew that I was undergoing a major evolution. And not only myself, but this was the ripple effect of our solar system's evolution, our cosmic evolution, and the evolution of our genetics. And this is when I went through my great awakening. My cells awakened me to get me on the evolutionary path, to come out of that dark night of the soul and emerge as the hero. And I was going to be prepared for another initiation. Once again, to go deep into the shadows, but this time, not unconsciously, but choosing to dive into the depths of the shadow for me to truly do this shadow work and understand my unconscious that was unraveling. And I needed to let go of everything. I needed to get myself out of the old matrix, out of that 9 to 5, out of the hustle and bustle. I needed to get myself to the mountains, and I needed to allow myself to go through this process away from home, away from everybody, because if I went through that process at home, I would have negative infiltrations in my mind, making me doubt myself, and I would worry those people around me. So I needed to go through this on my own in a safe space in nature, so I wouldn't have any interruptions, and I could allow myself to understand what exactly I was going through in 2004, 2005, 2006, and so forth. And that is when I was able to finally come back to myself, when I allowed myself a year away from the madness, 6 months up in the mountains, and just continuing to isolate myself so I could meditate and be in my own energy and understand the process without feeling judged, without feeling like I was making other people worried about me. Because in the past, when I worried my mother or I worried my siblings, it created a lot of stress for me, and then I couldn't focus on myself. So this time away, when my cells informed me that I needed to get away from everything in order for me to go within and understand my whole life and why I went through what I went through, I needed to be in my own energy where I wouldn't judge myself, where I could allow myself to unwind in the way that my soul needed to unwind without calling it crazy, without calling it psychotic, without being told I need to be medicated, without being told what I am going through, but allowing myself to experience this process unconditionally. And that is what I did. I followed my heart. I allowed my DNA to guide me. And that was 6 years ago. And I've continued to go through many initiations. But now I am able to go through these initiations with ease and grace, because the things that in the past had haunted me, I was able to face them without judgment. I gave myself that time to unwind and not judge myself. I removed myself from everything in order for me to lose everything and gain the most valuable, precious possible thing, my soul. So I want to encourage you to continue on your path. If you have gone through a lot of trauma, a lot of darkness, a lot of suffering in your life, just know that it's for a reason. you came here to heal it. But in order for us to heal, we first need to become aware of that pain. We need to allow it to unfold without judgment so we can offer it a safe home to express. And when we can allow it to diffuse, this is when we can transform and we will no longer be haunted. But when we run from our truth, we persist. We continue to reproduce that pain, and the attachment to that pain becomes stronger until one day it just snaps, it breaks, and now you can't run. I want to encourage you to keep going and to not fear the darkness, because fear is coming from what you do not know. But once you can dive into knowing, then there is nothing to fear, because now you can realize that it was all self-created. And just as you created that pain, you can transform that into beauty, into harmony, into your gift to life. Everything is possible when you have the will to move forward and you merge your will with the highest will. And when you learn to surrender and trust to something higher, which is your higher self, God's source guiding you, surrender. Because the more that you resist, the more that you harden up, things will only get tough. So let go, soften into it, and you will see that it's really not that bad. The most beautiful times of our soul is as we descend. That is a great show. And as we rise, wow, that is a miracle. It is beautiful. The ripening of the seed of consciousness, the crowning of the sun, awareness, the I am presence. If you found value in this video and you resonate with my energy, do not forget to subscribe and hit that like button, because every person who supports us is helping us move this powerful message. And I will see you on the next one.